winner of the 2022 Booker Prize is The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil McGregor. So, the winner of the £50,000 2022 Booker Prize for Fiction is Shehan Karunathilaka for The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. Her Majesty, the Queen Consort, will award the trophy, and a handshake from the chair of judges and a hug from Neil McGregor. And now the trophy from the Queen Consort. And we might just take a quick photograph as well.
Wow. 1 minute, right? I'll try. I'll try my best. Okay. Firstly, thank you to the Booker Foundation, the Booker Prize, to the judges for this inspiring, rich and brilliant long list, and for this spectacular short list. It's been a hell of a ride, and I've been expecting to get off at each stop. No such luck. I'm here at the final stop. To Percival, Elizabeth, No Violet, Claire, and Alan, happy birthday, Alan. It's been an honor and a privilege to be on this magnificent list with you. I'm fans of all your books and fans of you. And without meaning to sound trite, we are all winners for being part of this magnificent short list, though perhaps I might pocket the extra cash if that's okay. I was wondering, can I get that in crypto? Just because the British pound is doing marginally better than the Sri Lankan rupee at the moment, but let's talk later, that's fine. I have many people to thank for this, but none more so than Natanya Jans and Mark Ellingham from Sort of Books. You guys took this on when other publishers found this book weird and difficult and strange, which of course it is. But we took it on and we battled with it over the pandemic, and this is our win. This is our win. I have to thank David Godwin, Kanishka Gupta, Rebecca Weirmouth, Ruth Killick, Philippa and her team, and of course Manasi Subramaniam, Chiki Sarka, Faiza Khan, and Mohammed Hanif, who have advised me and guided me over the years. And mostly I have to thank my first-time readers who put up with so many messy, horrible drafts from me. Deshan Tennakon, Tracy Holsinger, Ravin Fernando, Shanaka Amrasinghe, Michael Myler, Sean Amrasekara, Govindar, John Ramesh Diseram, and Andrew Fidel Fernando. Yes, they all had to do it in shifts because it was horrible work, but thank you for your encouragement and for your brutal notes. The book, Seven Moons, is dedicated to three ladies. I live with three ladies. That's the kind of rock and roll lifestyle we writers lead. The three ladies are Chula, who used to read to me when I was too young to read for myself, Luca, who lets me read to her at bedtime, and of course Eranga, who's here tonight, who reads my stuff before anyone else does. And my wish for the writers in the room and the writers everywhere is that we know how dispiriting and demoralizing a writing life can be. So my wish for you is that you all have three ladies, or three gentlemen, or three non-binaries, or whatever combination you prefer, to look after you when the days aren't so good. Thanks to my brother Lalit, who does all my illustrations, my son Theo, who is probably doing the haka in his pajamas at the moment, and my father, who's lost the ghostly realms of dementia, but I know he would appreciate this. To Russell and Sunita Tennakon for their generosity and love, and of course, my lawyers, who are almost as important as the three ladies. Aftab Aziz, Datika Vikramanayaka, maybe you should start charging me now.
Sure.
So Seven Moons of Mali Almeida, it's about a murdered journalist. And I was going to do it Percival Everett style. I was going to read the names of all the journalists, the activists, the politicians, the civilians, the innocents who have been murdered by the state or by those opposing it in my lifetime in Sri Lanka. But if I had done that, we'd be here all night. So I was going to read the names of the obituaries from 1989 when the book was set. Activists like Richard de Soisa, Dr. Rajini Tirunagama, and Daya Patirana, who featured in this book. But if I'd done that, we would have all missed our trains. And I suspect I'm not traveling by train tonight. My hope for Seven Moons is this, that in the not too distant future, 10 years or as long as it takes, that it is read in a Sri Lanka that has understood that these ideas of corruption and race baiting and cronyism have not worked and will never work. And that it is read in a Sri Lanka, well, I hope it's in print in 10 years, but if it is, I hope it's read in a Sri Lanka that learns from its stories, and that Seven Moons will be in the fantasy section of the bookshop and will not be mistaken, next to the dragons and unicorns, will not be mistaken for realism or political satire. But let me just finally just say to the people of Sri Lanka, this is all I want to say. මේ පොත මං ඕගලන්ට ලිව්වේ මේක දිනුමක් රට පරාජය වෙලා ඉන්න කාලෙක මේක දිනුමක් අද ලංකාවේ මිනිස්සුන්ගා දුක් විඳිනවා ඒ දුක් මිදින්න මට ආයුධ නැහැ ඒත් මේ ජයග්‍රහණය අපි පිළිගමු ඊළඟේ සොන්දංගලේ එමදෙස් කදේ හලේ කූරුවෝම් කූරෙක් කොණ්ඩේ ඉරුප්පෝම් thank you ස්තුති ජය වේවා නන්රි
Shehan Karunathilaka, congratulations, the winner of the 2022 Booker Prize for Fiction.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to have you all here at Sarasavi bookshop. This is one of my favourite spaces in the world. If they had a cocktail bar in here, then I would just live here forever. It's a very special treat today, this morning, because we're honoured to have Booker Prize winner, fellow Sri Lankan, Shehan Karunathilaka here, to have a chat, answer some questions, and sign copies of his books, all of which are here, including Chats with the Dead and Chinamen, and my favourite, Where Shall I Poop? So I think it's great. Please give the man a round of applause for before the morning. So before we start, I'm just going to give, for those of you who don't know, a little quick biography of Shehan. He was born in 1975 in Gaul and grew up in Colombo, educated at St Thomas's Prep in Sri Lanka, and then went to New Zealand at Whanganui Collegiate School and Massey University. He graduated in English literature against his family's wish that he studied business admin. Before publishing his debut novel in 2010, he worked in advertising for McGann, Iris BDO, and has also written a lot of features as feature writer, so for The Guardian, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, GQ, National Geographic, Condé Nast, The Cricketer, and The Economic Times. He's played bass, so he's a bit of a rocker, Sri Lankan rock bands Independent Square, Power Cut Circus, and the Brass Monkey Band. Shehan won the 2002 Booker Prize as the second Sri Lankan to receive the award for his novel Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. Now, the Booker Prize is the most prestigious UK literary award for the best novel written in English and published in UK or Ireland. And I think that one of the key things is it only very recently opened up to non-resident British authors, English-speaking authors from other countries, as early as I think 2014. So this is a big thing, that we're getting different cultures and different perspectives of the world other than a UK, predominantly Western European.
I think it was open for
longer than that.
Longer. The Americans were let in recently. Like I know the past 10 years they allowed publications in America also.
Right, to come in.
Which, yeah, people weren't happy about that. But yeah, I mean, Salman Rushdie won in the 78 for
But Britishers, right? British.
Resident British.
Resident British,
Okay.
not from other parts of the world.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so please, it's lovely to have you here, Shehan. Thank you for coming and thank you for spending your time. Just want to ask you before we go on to Seven Moons, life before writing. So, we heard that you studied English Lit before, sort of against your parents' wishes of doing business admin. You've always been a writer, right from small days? Is that the case? Or when did the writing bug bite you?
No, we shouldn't diss the parents too much. I mean, they just kind of said, what are you going to do with a degree in English or film or sociology? To MBA, everyone's doing MBAs, they're quite nice and do economics, accounting, finance, something.
Yeah.
Which might have been more important than writing. We could have used maybe more economists than writers. But yes, I was always interested in it, but I kind of also was interested in reading, and so I gradually add more lit classes, and they only found out just before I was about to graduate.
Really?
Yeah, but I got back into doing it. No, I think I didn't really know in my 20s what I want to do, and most I meet people in their 20s and they're worried they don't know what they want to do. I think that's perfectly normal. I think it's normal and healthy not knowing it. And so I knew I was interested in reading and writing, but I was also interested in music, and I tried riding that horse for a while, but I guess I wasn't very talented. And I think the key thing was, proper guitarists, proper musicians, they play their instrument every day. If they don't, they feel like the day is wasted. So a lot of great guitarists that go back and things, I'd see them going, I have to go back and practice.
Yeah.
I didn't do that, but what I did, I had careers in advertising and feature writing and all that. I wrote every day. That's
You wrote every day?
Even as a kid, maybe I wrote about the fact that I wasn't playing enough guitar, or maybe as a teenager I kind of went moved to New Zealand and all that. I documented a lot of that stuff. So I suppose the thing you do every day is what you become. So it wasn't my intention that, and then I guess in my 30s, my music career or my corporate hadn't worked out, and it's getting a bit kind of tired of my corporate career, so I had to try my hand at writing a book, and I think the fact that I read anything every day, that helped.
Yeah. And you talked about also having that perspective from growing up outside of Sri Lanka. As a Sri Lankan growing up abroad, and having that exposure to other worlds and other cultures, how does that impact on your writing about Sri Lankan culture? Do you see yourself as someone outside looking into Sri Lanka, or do you still feel that you look at the world through a very Sri Lankan lens?
So I don't know if I grew up here in the sense it's always been throughout my life I've been few years out, few years in. So I was here till the age of 15, and then from 15 to early 20s I was in New Zealand, which are also formative years. But then since then, I've been here and worked in the States, and I've been in Singapore, and I've been back now for about 8 years. So I was always interested as a young writer, starting in the 90s. Remember we went to bookshops like Sarasavi and so on. There was a Sri Lankan section in the 80s and 90s. There was Sri Lankan books, certainly, perhaps on the lower shelves, not with the Jackie Collins or the Stephen King and stuff. And I always wondered why can't there be a Sri Lankan book up there on the main shelf. But I think after the 90s we had a lot of great writers. So Michael Ondaatje started the thebookerprize, and Romesh Kunasekara, Shehan and of course Carl Muller, who's perhaps not as celebrated as the other three internationally, but I think was a seminal figure. And so there was all that kind of inspiration. But and Michael Ondaatje talks about this in Anil's Ghost, the idea of waving at helicopters, that these movies in the 80s that we grew up watching, like The Killing Fields and all the Vietnam movies, so always a white protagonist comes in and has an adventure and all that, and then the final scene is them going away in a helicopter, and their friend is waving at them. And this guy goes back to New York and writes his Pulitzer article and has a life-changing event, but that poor guy has to go back to his crappy life in this war zone. And I was always interested in that guy.
Yeah, what's his story?
his story is like, he has to live in this place for the next 30 years. There's no 2 minutes of a hill.
Yeah.
So for me, that was always, I think when, the big names of Salman Rushdie, when Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children came out, that's what told a lot of South Asians that we don't have to write like Englishmen who lived 100 years ago. We don't have to sound like Somerset Maugham or Graham Greene. We can talk in our own language. And so I think Karnmula and Salman Rushdie, and obviously there were others, Arundhati Roy and Nabi and so on who came afterwards. But the idea that we can talk we have our own stories and we can tell it in our own voice, that was quite a liberating thing. So for me, I don't know, outsider looking in, insiders looking out, it does irritate me sometimes. I read Sri Lankan novels and instead of the white person coming in, it's now a brown person, but they grew up in some Western thing and they're coming back home to discover something. And that's fine, that's the experience, lived experience. But a lot of those novels end again with the helicopter scene. They're going away, but it's now, and they're waving at the lost love or something. And I'm thinking, okay, you've just taken that white trope and just brown it up. But for me, the real story is, what about the guys on the ground? You have to, and we're living here. It's our story. And maybe only we can tell it. It might be patronizing to outsiders. Yeah. So I do see myself as an insider, but ironically, I do have to. I've been traveling for the last 2 months. So I'm traveling that I end up writing things more because when your country looks a lot worse from the outside than it does from the in. Like earlier this year I was in Iowa while the Arabella and the economic crisis were reaching its peak. I was getting anxiety, heart palpitations, just watching it because it looks so much worse when you're looking on Twitter at people burning and all that. Here now I've been here for the last month, what's it like in Sri Lanka? It's not fine yet. We know it's not fine, but I say it's at least better than the last 6 months. So I think that going away helps. But answer your question, I do hope that I'm an insider rather than an outsider.
And I get the impression that you were a bit of a rebel when you were younger. Do you think you were a rebel?
I mean, I was a typical teenager, I suppose, and I guess at that time rock and roll was I don't know if rock and roll even exists or guitar-based music exists anymore. I think it's even called rock and roll. But yeah, I guess you can see I still haven't touched up my nails for a while, but you can see I'm still in that adolescent rock star look thing. But no, not really. I did like to read and write, but that was something that was passed down by my mom who's reading to me and all that.
Do you think that, your love of music, clearly like in Seven Moons, there's Queen, there's Elvis, there's Jim Reeves, there's obviously music is very heavily in there, obviously photography, other arts and the things that you've been into, they're obviously informing your work, right? They play a big part. How important as a writer is it for a writer to investigate other arts and pursue things, even if it doesn't particularly go to a blossoming career?
Well, I think whatever you do outside of writing helps. I know some who work in like a very unwriterly job, work in finance or banking and then writing is their creative outlet. But I know a lot of most writers, they're either working in universities, so they're engaging with literature perhaps, or they are journalists, again working with words, or in my case, copywriter, again working with advertising with words. So I still do my copywriting, but I've taken a break for now, but I'll probably still do that because I feel that also informs. So I spend a couple of hours doing work, then a couple of hours reading, a couple of hours writing, but I also taking breaks. I spend my money on the same stuff that I did when I was 13 years old. It's just books and musical instruments. So I have like keyboards and guitars, and I bought a drum kit recently, just before the book might write. My excuse is my kids can learn, but so I kind of play, as a break, play a scale or a drum beat and stuff. And I remember during the Chinaman days, this is before I was married, I was kind of living at home and quit my job, so I used to wake up and go for a swim and then write, and then spend the afternoon watching movies. And I think, look, as much as I like cinema, I can't see myself directing a film because it's a lot of work, sitting there and moving around. Also tell you have to know that dress has to be be red or blue if the light doesn't fall from here, and I'd rather just write the script and give it away. But that art, and looking at art, and I can't paint, or maybe my brother can, and the wife can. He's done all these pictures of Maldives, all this enjoyment and stuff. But I think it helps because also sleep helps as well, which is why I'm rambling today. I'm much more precise when I've slept today. But I think the next day, when you wake up the next morning, some of the problems that you had, which you can try looking at and writing is all problem solving. But you go away, play something, you come back, the problem somehow is falling into place. So I think it does work on some level in your brain where absorbing other art will inform this. So I can tell you directly the films that I watch influence this thing.
No,
yeah, but I think I don't believe in multitasking. I know that they say ladies can, men can't. I don't think anyone can. They kill themselves. But I do believe having a long to do this. If you have 7 things on there, you might do 3 of them, probably the least urgent ones. Yes. Which is why that's how kids' books and short stories were written. I was tackling the novel and I just had these other things to do. And you do the least urgent things and go forward. If you have one thing to do, you end up
spreading it out over.
And watching YouTube and making cups of tea and arranging your room and all that. When you have 5, 6, 7 things to do, you
focus.
Yeah.
Going on to 7 Moons, I'm going to read. How many people have read 7 Moons? Can I have a show of hands? Okay. So I don't want to do any spoilers. I'm just going to read the synopsis, the back of the book, pretty much. Okay. So set against the backdrop of the Civil War, the story chronicles the challenges and ethical dilemmas of a war photographer tasked to solve his own murder mystery. It is a story of a ghost trapped navigating the afterlife and coming to terms with his life, his work, his relationships, and his death. Structured as a whodunit, the story follows renegade war photographer Marley Almeida, who is tasked with solving his own murder. Embroiled in red tape, memories of the war, his own ethical dilemmas, and his awkward relationship with his mother, his official girlfriend, and his secret boyfriend, Marley is constantly interrupted by the overly chatty dead folk breezing through the afterlife as he struggles to unravel his own death. The author sets the book in 1989 as this was when, quote, the Tigers, the Army, the Indian peacekeepers, the JVP terrorists, and state death squads were all killing each other at a prolific rate. A time of curfews, bombs, assassinations, abductions, and mass graves seemed to the author to be a perfect setting for a ghost story, a detective tale, or a spy thriller, or maybe group of 3. So that's the synopsis of 7 Moons. The first question I'm going to ask you is, the pace of your writing is really fast. There's so much going on different dimensions. There's the ghost realm, and then there's the physical realm, and then there's sort of earthly scenes, and then there's timelines of 83, 87, Civil War, JVP. It reminds me of sort of like looking at a tapestry with everything going, every corner of the page there's something going on. So it's kind of slightly emotionally exhausting. I have to keep having a lie down after each chapter. Do you think that pace? And I read Chinaman, that was one of the first books when I came to Sri Lanka I read. That's also quite a fast-paced book. Do you think if you made the pace slower, it would change the story? Is that your style of writing, would you say? Or do you think it lends itself to mystery and whodunit, the pace?
So I think this is interesting you say this, because a lot of people have said, well, it's slow, it takes a long time to get started, and with both the books, I've heard that comment as well, that you need, after the first 1,500 pages, then it gets moving, but it takes a while. So, and pacing was something we worked on when we edited this from Chats with the Dead. It was, I don't call it pacing, I think you're right that there's a lot going on. So, Natanya Jans, who is here, I believe, in Sri Lanka, she's visiting, I think she's editing today, who edited this thing, and over 2 years of the pandemic. Her comment that she kept saying is, we don't want all the instruments to be playing at once. So for instance, the engine that runs it is a basic murder mystery.
Right.
The ghost has 7 days to solve their own murder. And with the murder mystery, you have suspects. That's the classic Agatha Christie trope. So who are the suspects? Who is a war photographer? He worked for all sides. So you have the FDP, the JVP, the government, the army, the NGOs, and some foreign interests. And so that was the structure we kept. But also there's a spy thriller element, as you pointed out. He's got these photographs under his bed, which could, he believes, end all wars if they were seen. And then also you've got the ghostly afterlife thing, he's chatting to ghosts, and so I had to draw that world building. And also, if that wasn't enough, there's a love story at the corner, a love triangle at the center of that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when we're looking, just taking the thing apart, it's that they all don't kind of collide together. I think maybe in previous draft that was a problem. There's a lot of information all at once. But yeah, we do look at pacing. Sometimes we'd say, okay, fourth moon is a bit saggy, why is it? Maybe we need to take this thing out. But I think with a thriller, because there's a lot going on, you don't want to bore people, because there are a lot of chatty, lecturing ghosts. I get mistaken for them. I'm not as, if you know me, I'm not as preachy or lecturing as my characters tend to be. But yeah, so there's a lot of digressions and talking about Sri Lanka and what we've done to ourselves. So we had to make sure that the reader was kept interested by this murder mystery plot and this political thriller plot. So yeah, we did work consciously on making sure the pacing, they don't get like digressed so much that they lose interest.
Yeah.
So it's a fine balance, and some readers will find it too slow, some will find it too fast.
Yeah, and then going on, because there is kind of quite intricate details in there. How much research, and how long did the research take for the book? And given that there was also Chats with the Dead first, and then a reiteration. 7 Moons is sort of a second iteration of Chats with the Dead, right?
I spend a lot of time in research. I'm in research phase for the third novel now. It's my favorite part because you can kind of waste time and you don't have any deadlines on you. And so for the first book, my research was I watched every cricket match from 82 to 99, and in the morning I hung out with drunk uncles at bars, and it was wonderful research. I did that for 6 months and just read about cricket and watched cricket. For this one, it wasn't as clear because I didn't have a precise idea. I just knew I wanted to write about ghosts to do with Sri Lanka's past. So yeah, I watched horror movies, read religious texts, theories of the afterlife.
Were the theories, are they predominantly Buddhist, or were there other religions that sort of had commonalities? The 7 moons, the 7 days of soul.
So okay, the 7 days specifically, that's the Eastern concept, which you see, I've seen in Singapore, Malaysia also. So I also part of the Hindu faith, like we have the Tulma Sadhani, which is 90 days or 90 moons. So I think that's a part of Eastern philosophy that you'll see together and Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. But I think I did borrow, I read Dante's Inferno, so you can see also there's parallels to that, and he had the spirit guide. But also near-death experience, the problem with the afterlife is no one can tell you, come back to the afterlife and tell you. If you go, you may not necessarily come back, but there are some people who have come back from near-death experiences, and those have been well documented scientifically. And they all talk about walking into the light, and I'm looking at the light there. The light is much not as blinding as that. And that when you walk in, there's guides and all that. And this carries up with Judeo-Christian theology as well. So you see that also in Christianity, in Judaism, is walking into the light. So I used that. The 7 days was also, it was good for a thriller that you have a ticking clock. That's part of it. You have to have a dead body, the suspects, and a ticking clock. They solve it before it's time. But yeah, I borrowed freely from a lot of sources in constructing, and so then there's 90 moons, and the idea of pretas and hungry ghosts. That's also quite easy to know. But I think I took from various sources, and in the end, no one can prove me wrong. But I think the thing I added was that the afterlife is a bureaucracy. And that was kind of my build on it. And it made sense to me because we have this illusion that the after, like when you breathe your last, you close your eyes, you open them again, all is revealed. The universe will be revealed to you, God will come down and tell you her name and so on. And this is, I mean, it's comforting thinking, but to me it makes more sense that you wake up and you're confused and you have a piece of paper, you got to go to that counter and get it stamped, but the guy at that counter is gone to lunch and will be back in 10 years, and you have to go over there and confess your sin. And then the afterlife is as confused as the down here. That, I mean, there was comedy elements that attracted me to it, but it was also explanation for me of why Sri Lanka keeps getting in these messes. Maybe there's all these restless spirits who are waiting to get a visa to their life, but they can't go, so it's they're going around whispering these bad ideas in our ears and causing us to do silly things. So that worked for me kind of from a community point of view, but also it kind of made some distant sense. So I did borrow from a lot of mythologies and a lot of...
I love the whispering, particularly, this idea of revenge. You know, when we think of revenge, we think of it as a very physical thing, a very brutal thing. You know, it's something that's kind of has physical energy, and yet you kind of turn that on its head because you have a flimsy, floaty ghost who, you know, can't really do much with physical, but he's whispering, a silent whisper, effectively, to cause revenge. I mean, is that, again, research idea, or this whispering and getting, for example, the car crash when Sane is whispering and teaching everybody to whisper to cause revenge? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the world building stuff took a long time to construct because once, also I was researching, there's plenty of me to research about the 89, about the JP era, what ITKF, LTG. I mean, there's a lot of sources, so I was immersed in that, but I was also trying to problem solve what it's like to be a ghost, because you can't just, I get very irritated with fantasy, science fiction stuff that suddenly in the final act you find out, oh, he can breathe fire. Why didn't you tell me, oh, he can get invisible? And then it's like, it's very irritating. You should set up the rules early on, even if you're creating a fantastic world, and be consistent. And so that was one thing I wondered about ghosts. Okay, what do you do? And can you go anywhere? Can you, and it just seemed to make sense. You can only go where your corpse has been. That's why you ghosts are either only seen at cemeteries or at their houses.
Yes.
You could travel with the wind,
Yes. And when your
which
name
was, and when your name is spoken.
spoken.
So that was also a convenient device as a murder mystery. So wherever Mali Almenda's name is spoken, he can immediately go there, which means he can sort of investigate the murder mystery without having to go through Gaul Road traffic. Yes. He can just fly by the wind. So that was convenient. So all this, but the whispering, that was, I think, a bigger, the problem, okay, so now the second person narrator, which we can come to, for me, I was thinking, okay, what does a ghost sound like? And I thought, perhaps if anything survives your body's death, it may be the voice in your head. Now, we all have voices in our heads. The voice in my head is in the second person. I don't know about your heads, but in mine, it's the second person. It's like saying, okay, you should have slept a bit earlier, you should have left, you maybe should have worn a different shirt today. There's a voice, it's like someone else telling me stuff.
Yeah.
And that seemed useful when I was writing this. But also it made me question, okay, your thoughts, where do your thoughts come from? Do they come from you? Do they originate from you? Or sometimes you think, you do something and you think, what was I thinking? Why did I react to that person in that way? And so it could be plausible that a thought is coming from externally, and you know, people who have severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, this is what they say, that I hear voices, the voices made me do it, the voices made me commit that terrible crime. And for someone who has, I won't say I've read a lot about hallucinogenic drugs, and I've heard the experiences similar, like you start hearing voices, and are the thoughts your own? Are your thoughts, and this is also, I sort of got into meditation. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a big Buddhist, but I've got a meditation app which I plug in for 20 minutes, if that makes me. But again, the idea is interrogating your thoughts and trying to cleanse your mind of thoughts. And so I think that's where this thing came from. I thought, why are Sri Lankans, why are we doing these moronic things to ourselves? Perhaps there are other spirits that work whispering in our ears. So that's where the idea came from, but it sounds like it came in one, it did, you know, this is from sitting down every day over like maybe the third year, this idea, okay, ghosts can whisper. Because it always irritates me also, ghost stories where suddenly the ghost can punch someone, and I'm like, Okay,
Doesn't make sense.
If ghosts can punch people, then and so it needs to be a plausible way. And I felt the way ghosts can act is by through humans, by putting these bad ideas in there, or even good ideas in their head. Ghosts don't all have to be evil.
Yeah.
But this is all world building and making it plausible. But I kind of plant those early, so hopefully it's not irritating when all these rules come into play.
Right. So there is the structure. There's almost sort of a mythological logic behind it. So you're building it up. You're
For
building the
sure.
characters up.
You have to have that. We had a lot more rules when we started. I think Chats with the Dead has a lot more ghost rules.
Yeah.
We kind of discarded most and just kept to the basic things that move along, that will help the reader and will move along the plot. So how they move, how they influence, and
smell is another. This is a very smelly book, I have to tell you. Smells plays a huge part. Ghosts can smell. And the descriptions that you do with, the Bear Lake, for example, the smells and the rotting flesh, and I mean, there's horrible things and beautiful things kind of mishmashed together. There's a beautiful one with, on the floating temple, the Buddha's looking down very impassively as these, you said buoyant dead. I love that because, this floating body, one floats, one doesn't float, and but it's all smells. You can smell these things, and painting a story with smells, again, it's this part of that process that it's very sensual.
Yeah, we do. So what I think people have the illusion that you write a book in one, or you start chapter 1 and then 6 months later you go to the end. But it comes through many, many rewrites, and so sometimes I'll go back to a scene and I'll think, I'm not really feeling that. Why is it? And maybe you add another sense in there, and so you just add a few smells in there to kind of enhance it. But also, I remember, I lived here in the 80s. I used to walk past the Bear Lake every day. It stank. Do people remember what the Bear Lake's a lovely place now. I love going for walks around it, but it was, asbestos. I've described it as best as I could. And it was a dark period, and I guess we had dark sense of humor. We were thinking, well, maybe they're dumping the bodies in here. Maybe that's why it's happening. And then, suddenly in the 90s, they had this, suddenly was okay. Yeah. But this idea always stayed to me that we knew that there were lots of bodies, missing bodies. Maybe they were dumped in the Bear Lake. So I knew I immediately had my first scene.
Right.
So also a first scene is very important with a book. So with Chinaman, I saw two uncles. So I guess it's all happened in this vicinity. I think at one of these hotels, at a wedding, I saw these two uncles punching each other, well, throwing biryani at each other, right? And I was wondering what, and these, they were well dressed, and they were like punching. I mean, it was quite comical to look at.
Oh my goodness.
I remember writing that and wondering what were they fighting over?
Right.
Were they fighting over politics or a lady or something? I thought obviously they were fighting over cricket. Why else would old men in Sri Lanka throw biryani at each other? And so that was my opening scene, but this was the other one. I thought this idea of these thugs kind of trying to bury bodies at 6 in the morning in the Bear Lake, and the bodies start to float, and they're like, what the hell should we do? Should we feed them to the cats? And I mean, it's kind of very dark, but it's also, there's absurd humor to it. And I sort of,
The humor is interesting because it is very, it's laugh out loud funny, and I think it's vital also because it kind of slightly softens some of those very harrowing, dark scenes. How easy or difficult is it? For example, there's one scene where Marley notices that the policemen, as they're going through this corridor, they take out their handkerchiefs to cover their noses and their mouths, and their handkerchiefs are color coordinated khaki with the uniform, and it's quite funny. But then you also talk about the blood-stained, human blood on the walls as they're going through this. How hard or easy is it to get that balance right, to soften an image but not belittle it with humor?
Yeah, it is a fine line, and I do watch like watching stand-up comedians who, they say a very offensive joke. Joke about a subject like genocide or rape or something. Make a very but they kind of thread that. It's a very tough thing to do, and a lot of them sometimes get cancelled for it.
Yeah.
Or they are able to navigate that joke. The humor is the world building, the ghost stuff. the political stuff is researched well, and so I kind of really craft it. The humor, not so much. The humor comes.
Does it organically come through the book, or?
So I know, like, I've watched Jerry Seinfeld talking about how he constructs a joke, and it's fascinating how they construct. P.G. Wodehouse. You read his novels. It's just, you know that this person is. People say he's not a serious novelist or not a. Well, I think he's a very serious novelist because you can see the craft. Sometimes you have a joke and it doesn't land, and you just take the beginning and put it at the end, take that word out, and suddenly it like really zings.
It lights, yeah.
And so there's that craft to it. But with me, I think I choose narrators. So in both of these books, the narrators are kind of wise ass, smart aleck, wisecracking guys, even though. So one of them is drinking themselves to death and their family is falling apart, but can see a punchline in everything. And I think same with this ghost who's now dealing with their own death, can also see the absurdity. So I like these characters because I'm not that wisecracking in real life, but I like hiding behind them, and so I think it's through their eyes that I see these horrible. So now the first one was just cricket matches, I suppose. There was a family drama, but here it's a lot more harrowing because, as you rightly say, there are cops and body disposers getting rid of bodies and so on. But I see it through one Mali's cynical, kind of dark, humorous eyes. But also, and this is, I think, some of the edits that came after Chats with the Dead. Because one thing Natanya said, he said, all your minor characters, they seem alike. And that, I think you can do a lot better than that. That all the kind of middle class characters are nuanced, but the cops, the body disposers, the drivers are just amorphous. And I thought, that is accurate, and that's I should address that. And so now if you look at Mali Almeida, the cops, there are different shades. There's one who actually believes in their duty,
trying to be professional, and he's just sick of the environment. And then the other one who just doesn't care.
The other one who's perhaps a political appointee and who, when the big guys get involved, springs into action. And then asks that question early on. Hey boss, what are we doing? Are we solving this murder or are we covering it up? I'm confused.
And there's a parallel with the two thugs on the other side. There's one who, he's very professional about his butchery and he wants to do the job right, killing, but do the job right.
Well, body disposal. They don't kill.
Sorry,
so they feel we are not killers, we are garbage men.
So even that, there's a definition around it, isn't there?
And he prides himself on professionalism. He's saying, we got to do this, let's hariyata kapala, kotala dannon, hariyata. And the other guy is like, and then the driver's like, this is filthy work, and he's quite demoralized. So that helped me also show a bit more empathy as a writer, looking at these different moral shades. They're not all, you can call them thugs and corrupt cops or whatever, but they all have their own moral code. One is thinking, this is the system, and I come out of jail, no one's going to offer me a job. This is work, I better do this work well.
Does that also go down to, there's a question I have here about identity, because there is, again, everyone has very specific identities and very specific shapes, like, those shades of, a policeman isn't just a policeman, you've got these different, one professional, one not professional. For me, Seven Moons is very much a book about identity, and do you think it's a Sri Lankan thing that we have this very passionate need to be defined and to define others? Or do you think that's not necessarily Sri Lankan, but that's something that every country has?
No, it's a sad thing that we still, and I see it in, I've got very young children, and I look at their homework, and they are hyper aware from as young as the age of 5 and 6. Who is Sinhala, who is Muslim, and in their textbooks say Muslims wear hats, burgers eat cakes, Sinhalese eat cow, Tamils have pottu. So they are hyper aware of. Sorry, what were we talking about?
We were talking about identity, and you were saying about your children and how from a very early age.
So I feel that, racial identity and the fact that, I got quite annoyed on school entry, you had to put race and religion. I go, religion, they're 3 years old, they don't know much. So, I'm traveling around India a lot, all around the subcontinent now, and I'll be back on the road next week again, and India, like America,
I don't think of America as a country. I think America as a continent. It's the people of Alabama is different from the people of New York City, as Hungarians are from Portuguese, and and I think India similarly. I mean, it's a vast country. Different states have their different flavors.
Yes.
But they still, I think they see themselves as Indian first. I mean, maybe now we've got divisive politics. I mean, you talk to them now about the current, and let's not go there. But I think traditionally, they think of themselves as Indian before thinking of themselves as Gujarati or Mallu or Bengali. Or being Bengali, being Malayalam, being a Goan. This is very much part of being a Sikh, being a Muslim. It's part of their identity. But I still think they feel they are Indian first. Though now we've got the Hindu politics coming in. So again, because that works in elections. In elections, that works. That's an easy way to divide your. Even though Facebook's got you so many ways to divide your population between elections, still we go for the old tried and tested ways of division.
Yes.
So I don't think it's necessarily a Sri Lankan thing, but certainly we seem to have been unable to get out of that trap.
Yeah. Now Marley's character, he's a closet gay. He hasn't come out. How important was Marley's sexual orientation to the book? And how do you think the story would have changed if he was straight?
Well, also you can't kind of tell. It's an illusion that you sit there and you create characters out of clay and pull out your rib and you create them and you get them to walk. They kind of become their own personalities.
Yeah.
And my inspiration for Marley Almeida, I mean, I've spoken about it many times, was Richard de Soisa. And I sort of, visually, I think he looked a bit similar, and I'd start from that point of view. But of course, Richard de Soisa wasn't a war photographer or a gambler, as far as we know, or he was a theatre guy, actor, an activist, and so on. So I think Marley Almeida's character developed, and his relationships, and the fact that he was a photographer, and that he took these calculated risks, and his fact that he was atheist, all that evolved. The only thing that remained from Richard de Soisa was the sexuality. And being a closeted gay in 1989, I don't know if there was any other type in Colombo or in most parts of the world. If you were a gay man, you had to deal with the humiliation and shame that society put on you, and deal with you. And many remained in the closet and denied their sexuality, but some, like Marley, of course he had to stay in the closet, but he wanted to express himself sexually, and perhaps this also made sense to me, like, why is this kid from, living in Colombo 3, Colombo 7, oh no, he's in Galface, Colombo 3 technically, why is he going to these very dangerous places and risking his life? And I think out in the war zone he could be himself. In Colombo he couldn't do that. So that also offered another explanation, I think, of. And I think just generally his character, a man of many secrets. So he has this, and he has this girlfriend that he portrays to the world. Yes. And he has this box under his bed, and he's also got secrets from his loved ones and so on. So it all made sense. I can't see him being a straight. If he was a straight guy, well, I might have to reorder the entire plot and the relationships. It was more interesting for me. But also, I think it's interesting for me to also inhabit characters different from yourself. So with Chinaman, I was writing from, I was in my early 30s. This was a guy in his 60s. So a guy twice my age, from a different generation, a lot more conservative, very different attitudes to me. And it was fascinating for me to inhabit that character. So I think same with this. To, because he's a bit more similar. He's in his 30s. I think I was in my 40s when I was writing. So you don't want to end up having your narrator look like a about piece for yourself, know, that then you might as well write biography or opinion pieces. So I think those were the reasons. I saw no reason to change it because it seemed to work, and it just added to who Marley was, and it made sense.
And it also added to this idea, I mean, there's very much blurring of lines in the whole book. So I think we often see corruption as a sort of a very absolute opposite of honesty and integrity, but in the book you show that the goodies and the baddies, it's a very relative thing, and right down from police taking bribes from Marley's mom, who gives a bribe to have her son's disappearance investigated, right down to the NGOs and the roles Elsa plays. So characters aren't you know, there's a blurring of lines very much. Was that deliberate? Again, did those blurring of lines kind of organically come, or you had to really structure those?
Well, we're trying to write as authentically as possible, and early on, there's a cheat sheet in the book for Western readers. It's quite blatant. I mean, I wasn't happy with putting it in, but I thought it was perhaps necessary, where it very simplistically talks about who the LTT is, who the JVP is, who the IPKF, who the UNP and STF and all that. And the final line is, don't look for good guys in this war, because there ain't none. They're all different degrees of bad guys. But I think also, I mean, the examples you gave, I mean, look, I'm sure if I asked everyone here, you know, are you against corruption? Everyone would be, yeah, of course, you know, it's a horrible thing. But then if I say, I can get your passport done in, you know, I got a catcher who can get your passport done, you don't even have to leave home, just pay this and it'll be there by lunchtime.
You did?
Well, I went to the passport office, like right after the book, I had to go there to renew my passport. I had the irony because the computers broke down.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a stampede outside and I was wearing my mask and looking around, and it's the first scene from Mali Almeida happening again.
Wow.
But so, you know, we can take these moral stances, but in this country to wipe out corruption, and I traveling on the subcontinent, I see very similar lived, you know, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, I see this same thing. And lots of politicians have campaigned, let's wipe out corruption and all that. But the fact is, it is organic to our lives. We all use it, even in a small way, we all do it. So, I mean, this is not an excuse. I think we need to do it, but I thought you want to capture that reality. And,
and that's the thing. I mean, this is it's a very Sri Lankan book. It's Sri Lankan locations, Sri Lankan characters, it's Sri Lanka all the way, but internationally, obviously internationally accessible. How do you kind of explain Sri Lanka to someone who doesn't know her as a country, and yet not let the explanations block the plot of the story, the flow of the story?
So that's a constant challenge, and I think as someone who's spent 2 years rewriting the thing for the West. It may sound hard to believe, but I don't, when I write the first draft, I'm not thinking what is an editor in London or a publisher in New York going to think about this. It'd be ludicrous to think of that, because also, I mean, okay, now I've had some success, so I can reliably say that the third book will get published in the West. But when I was writing Chinaman, no way, you know, you're sitting there writing in Kolpeti, it may get published in India, you're not thinking it's going to get published. And also, if you start thinking that way, then every time, okay, the character had a kottu roti, you got to now, one paragraph, what is a kottu, explain, and I don't do food, I'm not Anthony Bourdain, I can't, it'll take me a month to write the description tightly. And then, and you got to, and suddenly it becomes a travel guide, and that's not what you're supposed to be writing. So I write it for readers like me, I mean, Sri Lankans, people from the subcontinent who maybe have some knowledge of what the locality is. And then when I do the edits, I might add a little clue as to, so they can, the reader may not know what a kottu is, but they can ascertain that it's this kind of street food or whatever. So I do that. I hate doing glossaries. So now it's been translated in lots of languages. I mean, call them to glossaries. And I think, again, when you're reading fiction, you're not going to go back and look at this thing, even footnotes. So I think that's part of the craft as well. You should write it with the authentic flavor and just have little signposts. But yeah, I think if you start writing thinking of that Hollywood producer who's going to make it into a movie, I mean, it may work for some, but I think it may compromise on how authentic your story is.
Now you said, I was looking at a couple of interviews that you'd done, and you said this was a heavy book to write. In what way was it heavy?
They are all heavy to write. Even Where Shall I Poop was heavy to write. I don't think it's all tough. I guess because with the first one you're researching cricket matches and you know, thinking what a drunken uncle would their take on a situation. With this, I had to go and research 89, and you know, if you think the book is gruesome, if you go and read about the real things that happen there. They're far more harrowing, and I say it in the book, don't be afraid of ghosts, or, reality is far more gruesome than anything that Hollywood or the afterlife can conjure up. And so I think researching that stuff was quite difficult and quite depressing. But also I think the book, like we alluded to before, has had a lot of moving parts. So it was quite a task to, and a book, that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure there's a cooking analogy to this, but until it's done, it looks a complete mess. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long it takes. It's at each point you think, is this thing worth doing? Is it going to fall apart? Until at the final, I think the souffle is the example, right? The final, the last month, suddenly it all like falls into place, and you're like, oh wow, who wrote that?
You've got to keep going, even though you have to.
I think what happens, most people write and it's crap, and they think, oh, I shouldn't waste my time. But a writer will feel that as well, but come back and think, okay, maybe I can correct this bit, and you keep doing it. So I think that's why it was quite exhausting, because I did many drafts and many different versions, changed the plot and so on. So I was never sure if it was working or if it was going to collapse. I think it helped having a great editor as well. And also once it was done, I still had to rewrite it. So Chats with the Dead had to be rewritten again. So, but also I worked in advertising. I'm used to clients changing copy. I mean, it's a smaller thing, you think you cracked the idea and it comes back with all these marks. And you die a bit inside, and you sulk, and then you come back and you do the corrections. I guess it's smaller scale, a radio spot to a 400-page novel.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same attitude, and so once I got over my sulk, I knew that with each edit it got better, and that's the reality of having a good editor and being honest to the process. If you keep doing it, the book gets better and tighter, and you have to have faith in that.
Yeah. And then my last few questions, just in terms of the Booker, what is the Booker, winning the Booker, what's it meant for you? What do you think it's meant for Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan literature? And actually, literature as a whole, I mean, what do you think of these awards? Are they good? Are they bad? Do they, do they shape your writing in some way? Is the second book now, is there more pressure on you because you've won the Booker to get the second book out? How does that impact your creativity?
Well, I mean, I say this a lot when asked on awards. All awards are nonsense until you win one. I think that's, and then everything else, because I mean, you look, the Beatles won 1 Grammy, Post Malone has won 19, and Hitchcock never won an Oscar. So you can look at examples of great artists who've never won awards, and let's be honest, so many, because I do follow these, the Pulitzer, the Booker, and you try and you read, and there have been a few times I've read the winner of the Booker going, what the hell was that? How did that thing win? Perhaps people are saying that now after reading this, and that's part of it. So it's you have to accept it's a lottery, and it's now the Oscar nomination's out, and every year I try and watch the Oscar movies and so on, and then suddenly something wins, and you're like, so it's a bunch of judges. I mean, the Academy Award's much more complex, but with the Booker and stuff, it's 5 judges in a room, and in previous years, like when we were editing this, my editor Natanya said, actually good. So Anup Prakasan got nominated, I think the previous year, same year as Damon Galgut. And that year the judge said, I really prefer realistic fiction. And you can see that in the choice. I mean, there's magical elements, but it's not like overtly crazy like this. And Natanya said, maybe to comfort me, was like, it's good that we haven't got the book finished, because this year you probably wouldn't have had a chance of getting longlisted. Whereas this year I noticed the judges were into some weird stuff, like Percival Everett's The Trees is bizarre, Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, which is on the long list. A lot of experimental stuff. Again, not a lot of big names there, mostly unknowns apart from Elizabeth Strout. So it is a taste of the judges. So you have to, and that was the attitude I had. Like, I mean, in the middle of a petrol queue, we got the long list thing, and I was like, okay, wow. But this was the same book that was finished a year ago. No one wanted to review it. Like, we were trying to say, okay, the book's coming out in August, would you like to review it? And people in publishing are very polite. Goes, oh, that's very interesting, congratulations. We'll put it on our list, and which is basically they're not going to touch it. then the long list happens, and I thought, okay, wow, okay, now at least maybe it'll get reviewed and it'll be on the bookshelves and all that. And then the short list happens. So then it's 1 in 6. But you know, like 1 in 6 is a dice roll. And that was my attitude throughout. It's like, okay, a short list is great now. I mean, I didn't anticipate it'll be plastered around bookshops like this, but so you have to take it as the lottery. But then when you win the lottery, you don't go to you gamble it away. You have to be grateful for it, and I am. Because what it means certainly for me is that, I mean, for the next 12 months, I'm not going to write anything. I'm just going to be going around talking. I think that seems to. Damon Galgut said this as well. He said, my friend, he looked exhausted. He said, my friend, you're not going to write a thing. Don't worry. Just enjoy it and all of that. So it does mean now, Chinaman was published in English and Sinhala. This is now 26 languages. So, yeah, I'll be traveling a lot. And yeah, the Russians and the Ukrainians bought it, the Chinese and the Taiwanese. It's like it's unite everyone. Warring nations are. Chinaman got sold to China. I've been trying, Chinaman got sold to China. Of course, they're changing the title. So this is the one thing America and
what
China.
What are they changing it to?
Well, in America also they.
It's
called The Legend of Pradeep Matthew, because in America, Chinaman is a racial slur because of Chinaman built the railroad, all those things. So, but I think in China, Chinaman may be a misleading title.
Ruby Man.
They don't. Well, and they don't know about cricket. So yeah, what I'm saying is, okay. So now this book is now going to it is read widely, and so that's the reality. But what I do know is this: it's not going to make the third book any easier to write. The third book is not going to write itself. I'm going to have to, once the circus is over, get back into the dark room, close the curtains, put on the music, and
play the guitar and
jam for as long. I mean, I hope it doesn't take 7 years. Okay. My next book is not. I mean, I won't talk too much about it, but it
I was going to say that was my very next question.
Yeah, it's just bad luck to talk about books that haven't been written. Now, this is free advice for all writers. Don't talk about the thing. Just do the thing. Not even to impress someone at a party.
Keep stum.
Keep stum. Just write the thing and then talk about it if you have to. But it will be about Sri Lanka. It will be absurd because it's about Sri Lanka. But it's not going to be as heavy as this, and maybe not as violent as this. It's what I'm saying is I'll have to go back and do that. It's going to be just as hard as all these books were.
Yeah.
If it's bad,
dreading it, looking forward to it.
That's the game. Like that's the thing we enjoy doing. Like people ask me, how has your life changed? It's just that everyone wants to talk to you, and I've been cultivating an air of being unapproachable all my life. You know, I like to go to parties and just stay in the corner and look at people. And now I go to parties and suddenly I'm surrounded by people asking me questions, and so that's very weird. And writing is you're seated in a room talking to yourself.
Very solitary.
You're talking to you, and that's kind of where I'm happiest. I mean, if I'm in a good mood, I might talk to my wife and my kids, but otherwise I'm talking to ghosts and myself. And so it's a very unnatural existence to be out here with mics talking. And mind you, I've done now 7 interviews this week, and I have 2 more to go, I think. I think in the end, the Booker, these awards, they do boost your career and all that. But the real thing is, when you're writing, you're not thinking of that. You're writing. For me, actually, I'd say the measure of a great book is not if it becomes a bestseller or if it wins awards. I think if a reader from the other side of the planet can pick up the book and have an experience with it, even if they know nothing about left arm spinners, Sri Lankan cricket or LTT, if they know nothing about that, but they read it and they have a reading experience and a human experience, that's the measure of a good book. And that's really hard to do. It's really, really hard to do. And if you succeed at that, and you know, the writer knows if they've succeeded, and then you put it out in the world, whether it wins awards or not, that's a success. And I think that's the thing that's in our power as writers. That's the only thing we do. Let's make the thing as good as possible. Because it could have easily not got long-listed, and it would be in that little section over there. And I'll be begging you to do a piece. And that reality was it just changed after whenever it was July. Because up till then, I mean, Chats with the Dead came out. It was, I mean, people read it. It was a modest kind of did okay. But most books, that's the thing. You write it in anonymity. and it comes out, and maybe a few people like it, and certainly not many who get to the top of the Sarasavi bookshop.
Yeah.
The Stephen Kings and the J.K. Rowlings are the 1%.
Tiny amount. Yeah.
So I think as a writer, you steel yourself against this, and you're like, look, I'm going to write regardless of if anyone reads it or not, and that's the best place to be, I think. And but you know, when the lottery, when you roll a 6 and the casino, the slot machine spits out the coins, you don't say no. You have to be grateful, but that's not what we write for. I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So look, we do have time for some questions. We do have time, right?
We do, well.
A few questions. Does anybody have any questions for Shehan?
What would the version of you where you went against friends and studied English literature think of this Booker winning version of you with your book passed around the bookshelves, like you said?
What, my parents?
No, what would your version of you where you studied English literature as a young person think of you, like the now version of you? Would you be proud?
What would your younger self think of you? Yeah, I don't play that thought experiment. No, I have written, I mean, there's a book here about a time machine in this, so maybe I have played that thought experiment, but not with myself. I think, okay, when I was studying, I was just a reader, and I think that's where writers start out, and that's where most human beings should start out. I think if we had a nation of readers, we wouldn't be in so much strife, I think. So I started out as a reader, and I distinguished it because I was interested in what were the great books that I should be reading. I'm not sure. I had more stupid ambitions of being a bass player and touring the world with a band. And so I guess now I'm touring the world, but there's no bass or band, and I can't sing. So I suppose, you don't sit there thinking you're going to win Booker Prizes or Grammys, or maybe when you're like 13 and you rehearse in front of the mirror, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know if they would have quite believed it. Yeah.
I really don't know. I really don't know what that guy. I can barely remember that guy. But I suppose they'd be pleased. But they'd be saying, okay, when are you getting your album recorded? Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah. So I have just one question, which we have always been arguing back and forth. I would like to know the exact difference between Chats with the Dead and Seven Worlds of Mali. Is there any similarities, or are the two books quite different, or none at all?
No. It's certainly. Yeah, it's weird because I read. It seems I'm doomed to write my books twice because Chinaman also came. There's a local version which we self-published, which was about 500, 600 pages, and that got edited down into this version. Chats with the Dead, I would say it's the same book as Seven Moons. It begins in the same place. It roughly goes through the same set of steps, and it ends in roughly the same place. So they're not two separate books, and I know it's very confusing to have the same book in different covers and titles. One just, it came out in 2020, just before COVID. It came out in the subcontinent, but it could not be published outside. Like a lot of UK publishers, US publishers were. India were down with it, and I think India also, Chinaman had a bit of a cult following, so they were eager to get a book out before Jaipur that year. No one anticipated the pandemic, but then, so the pandemic, I can think, that meant that we had 2 years to edit this thing. So what happened, initially it was just making it more palatable or accessible to a Western audience. So that meant explaining little things and all of that.
So there are differences.
But no, there are much more significant differences. There were, like, we took out some scenes. There's a scene in Chats with the Dead where they feed the bodies to cats. The guys are cages of cats and they feed the body, and it's straight out of my nightmares. And Natanya very politely just said, look, page 50, you're feeding bodies to cats. You're going to turn off half your readers here. And do you need it? We've stuck around with these disgusting people. Let's move to the next thing. So things like that, and actually now they just talk about
the cats.
They joke about it, should we feed them to the cats? And then someone says that's disgusting. And that cut out like 20 pages. This is what a great editor does. And then there was stuff like, let's Mani's not very likable. Why isn't he likable? And I'm not sure he's even likable in the final version. I'm not sure a character needs to be likable you just need to, they didn't be compelling. But we did look at, his relationships with his loved ones, with his girlfriend, his boyfriend, his mom and his dad, and we deepened some of those. So I think when you have infinite times, and then I think we added in a couple of scenes, took out a whole plot. So there was a lot of surgery. So what I'd say is Seven Moons is obviously it's much pacier and much more accessible. And in the end, I think you only find a few of these around. Even Penguin India have replaced it with Seven Moons. So this will be the definitive version. And so if you have chats with the dead, get it signed and you can sell it on eBay.
Yeah, collector's item right here.
20 years or something. But so I apologize for making people read the same book twice. Imagine what it was like writing it twice. That's all I can say. But yeah, sorry, long-winded answer, but same book, but this benefits from 2 years of expert editing. Yeah.
Congratulations on winning the prize, and we Sri Lankans are super proud of you. So I think
thank you very much.
There are a couple of comments I think on social media by the extreme nationalists, but majority of Sri Lankans are super proud of you.
Thank you.
Amazing achievement for Sri Lanka at a time like this. So this is So my question comes from our book club. We discussed this book last week in detail. We have been reading it for the last 2 months. We've been slow readers. So at the beginning of your interview also, you spoke about the school system and you challenged it. So the question is, you touch base on all the leading schools in Colombo, but you place Didi and Mali at St. Joseph's College, a school that does not have a reputation in the social circles to be differently inclined. So is this your way of challenging the school system, or is there something else you were? Is your creativity running?
Wow. What school did you go to, I want to say? Give me this. Yeah, so I think
So there is a hardcore book club group which has Europeans and Vegetarians. So Vegetarians didn't mind the criticism you have made about them, but the Joes were quite.
Well, what's the criticism? Do you think all the homosexuals come from St. Thomas's? No, I said it, but you were implying it. I hate to inform, but I think they are all over the place in every school. And I think I took enough shots at Royal and St. Thomas's in Chinaman, because W. Karunathilaka went to Maliyadeva Kurunagala, so he was like, this old school type stuff is nonsense, Because also this is something that the birth lottery, that idea which comes through in, I think, all the novels and overtly. When people are proud of their schools, my mom went to LC, my wife went to LC, so obviously my daughter is not going to go to Visakha and all of this. But I often these people are proud of their schools, and I think this decision was made when you were 5 years old. You had no part in this decision. At 5 years old, someone else decided they'll send you to this place, and then now you wear it as a badge 30, 40 years later. So I think that's what WG was critiquing. Why did I make them Josephians? I think they had to be, son of a minister where would he send them to? And I didn't want to invoke the same Tonians or whatever. And, I know a lot of Josephians, so I think your hypothesis, I know Josephians of all stripes, 20, so it was a shot at the school. I'm an equal opportunity offender. No, that shouldn't be offensive though.
Thank you. Right, so that's one more, the very last one. This is the last one.
So thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to meet you. So your book is amazing, like I said, and I want to talk about the book, but I want to talk about the process of it. Because we all have bad days, right? We all have days that, we just can't pick up a pen and write. I'm a researcher, so I know the comments that we get from this is why I'm not doing it. So can you tell all of us here as to the process that you went through to get this book to the Booker Prize? Or you might, as you said, you might not have that goal in your mind, but the process of how you did that and the hardships and how did you tackle those days to us, to all of you. Thank you so much.
Okay. So you don't, you don't write for Booker Prizes. I mean, maybe look.
Thank goodness.
See, I mean, these lists of prizes and all that, I think it's useful for readers because they curate. Because I mean, this year the long list was tremendous, and each year the thing comes out, and I always look at the things that I might be interested in, and so I did that way. Reading the thing that you want it to sound like always helps, and whether you're doing a research report, whether you're doing an ad, I often do that. I kind of so with this, like the first book I read a lot of P.G. Wodehouse because I wanted to get that kind of humorous tone to it. I read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut, which I talked about a lot, and so you read the books that you'd want to sound like. But also, I think the basic thing is you turn up every day. It's a job. It's a job, and you turn up every day. And even Sundays, I mean, I try and give myself a break. But yeah, definitely 6 days a week. And you turn up at the same place, same time. So for me, it was early mornings before the kids wake up or before work starts and all that. So 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I have those hours because your phone is not pinging. Facebook is dead, there's no distractions, and your mind is also clear if you've slept well. And you're just turning, and you know that you have good days and bad days. With every job you have that. I mean, writers get the luxury of calling it a block, but you don't get researchers block, plumbers block, you don't investment bankers block, that's what we're experiencing. We don't, but you turn up every day, and Monday nothing happens, so fine, maybe you don't know enough about the subject, maybe you can spend Monday reading about stuff. Tuesday nothing happens, force yourself into a line, but what you don't do is you don't run away on Wednesday and watch movies or sometimes it does help, like to go for a walk and stuff. But you turn up every day, and definitely by Thursday, 1 hour before you close, you'll get a few paragraphs, and then you wake up the next morning on Friday and suddenly that becomes 3 pages. And it's happened so many times that I know this magic works, but you just have to turn up every day. But if it's not happening, you find other tasks to do. So in my case, I play music or going for walks, exercise, whatever. But you turn up every day, and I mean, I'd like to write a book every year, every 2 years and stuff. It takes 7 years. I hope the next one will be faster, but I know that there's no shortcut to it. I have to still turn up every day and do it.
Okay, that's it for the questions, because I know there's going to be a huge long queue for signing. So thank you very much, Shehan, for coming today. Thank you very much, the audience. And that's the interview.
TV. යුගයේ සයිබර් අන්ධහැරය.